Peer pressure. All through our lives we've experienced peer pressure. Maybe when you were younger, the first time you really experienced peer pressure in a negative way was maybe you were at a store and all your friends decided to take a piece of candy and you took one too. Maybe one time when you were wanting to play soccer, your friends convinced you to study for your math test instead. In any case, peer pressure can be negative or positive. But as Christians trying to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, we're gonna probably experience quite a bit of peer pressure that's gonna convince us to do things that we believe are wrong. Because a lot of the people around us are living just on a day-to-day basis, not thinking about the future, not thinking about the outcome of things. One person that I can think of that had a lot of peer pressure was Daniel in the Bible. You can read about him in the book of Daniel. When he was born into a royal family, but he was born at a time of instability in his government. And when he was only a teenager, he was actually captured and they took him away to the capital city of the invading army, Babylon. And they wanted to convince him and kind of brainwash him to say, into becoming like a Babylonian because he was extremely intelligent. So one of the ways they decided to do this is when he first came there, they prepared a great feast for him, had all the best foods. But Daniel, from the time he was young, he decided that it was healthier to eat a plant-based diet. And he decided not to eat any food that was offered to other gods either. So even though most of the other people there that came from his hometown were actually eating the food anyways, he decided, I'm gonna resist this peer pressure, I'm gonna resist this temptation. And so he went to the person in charge and he asked him if he could have a diet that was off of plants and didn't have any food that was offered to idols or other gods. And they actually allowed him to, and because of that, he was actually smarter and God blessed him and he actually got a really high government office. And Daniel, part of what his secret to overcoming peer pressure was is he would pray 3 times a day. Later on in Daniel's life, he had, as any person with a political office, he had political enemies, and they decided they wanted to get him out of office. So they looked at his life and they found the one thing that was consistent about him, and he would do every single day, is he would pray and he would ask God to, help him, and he would pray 3 times a day. And so they decided the best way to do that is to touch on the king's prejudice and stuff, and say that people could only pray to him and treat him like a god. So they got the king to pass this law, and the law forbid anybody to worship any other god other than the king of Babylon. And there was a death penalty. Anybody who broke the penalty would get killed, and they'd throw them in a lion's den. And these lions weren't fed, so they would devour anything that was in there. That's more peer pressure than hopefully any of us will face. But Daniel, he continued to pray, and they did. They threw him in the lion's den, but God was actually with him, and he shut the mouths of the lions. Well, hopefully in our lives we won't be facing any actual real lions, but sometimes the peer pressure or the temptation we face can feel like lions, And but God, the way we can overcome peer pressure or any temptation is to surrender to Jesus and ask him to take away the desire for that thing that we know we shouldn't be doing. When we feel pressured to do something that we know goes against his will, regardless of how small it is, we need to come to him and we need to ask him to give us strength and to help us to desire the things that he wants us to desire and not the things of this world. We need to ask him to help us to be able to surrender to this world, and we need to keep our focus on our eternal goal. We don't need to be focusing on what people want us to do here, because in the long run, it's not going to make any difference. We need to focus on what God would have us to do, and we need to be preparing every day for not this home and not to fit in here, but we need to be preparing to fit in with Jesus. Because in the end, that's really all that's going to matter.